All right. Hello. My name is Daniel Guys. I'm the creative and technical director at ED Films, and here we are for another Watch Me Work slash YouTube live stream. Today, I was going to go through a bit of the process of making some environments, animated environments, using some animated assets that we have on the ED Films store. I don't want to do like a sales thing or anything like that, but if you go to the edfilms.net, you can find these assets. A lot of them, some of these are new that we're launching on the store, and they're pretty affordable. And you can start using them in your scenes if you want. But I have to make essentially I have to make some animated banners that showcase how I'm using these animated assets and what they can be used for and how they look. So that being said, I just want to show you really quick where things are at and what we're going to do. We're going to play with maybe some different style things. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't plan everything out really aggressively. But what I'm basically doing is I'm taking stuff that kind of looks like this. These are what the assets look like when they're really raw. And then we're treating them and doing some stuff with it to get things that are a little bit more like this. Um, you can see that this one there's a little bit of a problem in the plants in the background, so I've since fixed that. So I had to re-render everything. So we're going to go really quickly and recomp this scene because I had to fix these leaves that are just freaking out in the background. But and I'll just kind of show you overall how the little lens flare and stuff was thrown in. Oh hey, Ahmed, thank you, thanks for the compliment and thanks for joining the stream. Let me know if you guys have any questions. So these are just some of the things I put together in After Effects really quick to showcase the little animated assets we made that are really raw. And these are from the paint effects in Maya, and we've spent a lot of time working on them to make them look good enough to be used in an animated project. Now, most of the time for me, I would not use these animated assets like this, like super straight up and realistic, because they honestly they don't hold up to that kind of a lot of scrutiny. You can see that you can do a lot with them. They look pretty good, but the idea is not for them not to be photorealistic. They're meant to be stylized. So and I guess that's the point of the assets is they're meant to be like you grab them and then you kind of tweak them and mess around with them to make them look better. They're not meant to be a realistic, completely believable thing. It's more to add movement and life to an animated project, right? So I'm going to show you. Hey Nayan, I hope I'm saying your name right. And hey Pachelovic, thanks for the compliment. Thank you. Um, I'm not sure. Is this Mahiti 123? Which I think I'm seeing you on the Watch Me Work. Welcome to the stream. Um, and Claudio, thank you. Hey, okay. So sorry, I'm gonna try to look at the chat or the stream and show you. So, anyways, this is what it kind of looks like. But I want to show you how terrible everything looks before. The assets on the store are 4K and 2K. Currently, we're putting some of these plant assets at 2K. They're usually about 4K squares, depending on how big the files get, because we're trying to keep the bundles down to 5 gig right now, just for download speeds. Because right now on the website, we don't have the ability to break them down into individual file downloads, which we are going to be working on next, so that then I can give you 4K versions, because right now I've rendered everything as 4K, and some of them I've had to size down because the packages are too big. They're like a 9 gig download, which is just way too much. So we're trying to keep them at 5 gig. So this shot here, these ones I did the whole shot at 4K. It's like a 4.5K banner. So it's about 1500 high, and you get pretty close to the assets. And they're not meant to be super microscopically detailed close to the camera. I use them with a lot of depth of field so that you can kind of hide them as they get close and get a bit pixelated. You can blur them out. So it's really just being clever about how you're using them, but they can add like a ton of life to a project. So I'm going to show you really quick how we did this scene here. And then if we have time, I'm going to sort of walk through one from scratch, okay? So this one I'm working on right now. I'll show you the basic breakdown of it, and I didn't plan this super well, so this might be a little rough. So just bear with me, and I'll try to answer any questions that you guys have. So it's a little bit slow because again it's 4K, but I'll show you essentially what the setup is. and you can see it's not very nice looking, right? Like you look at it as it is right now, like this is what I rendered, right? Knowing what I was going to be able to do with it later. So essentially, that's what's hard to sell about assets is that they look pretty bad. Like if you look at them on their own, this is what they look like. They're not very nice, right? Like they don't look super realistic. And the thing that's important though is the movement that you get from them, which I think is the most important thing, because then you can start modifying and doing all kinds of other things with them and mixing them into your existing scenes. So there's a few different, I don't know why that's not there's a few different that we've made. You can see they're mostly pretty rough because they're also rendered in real time. So just enough to give you some shadow and some color that you can work with, and then start playing with them. So I'm going to show you how you can grab these and actually play with them. Oh, thanks, Pachelevic. Spunrita is like, yeah, she's in Australia, so she's on the other side of the clock, essentially. So anytime she can join us, it's like it's madness, in my opinion, because she's up super late. But thanks for passing that along. Okay, so you can see how bad these look, and I'm just going to show you a really quick breakdown of how the scene works. This specific scene. We'll just go to a custom view just to have a look. Lots and lots and lots of layers, as you can see. So I'm kind of using a few different packages in this that we've put together. So we have a flower pack 1, a flower pack 2, and each pack has about minimum of 5 assets. And then I've thrown in some of the grasses and stuff that we've done. But you can see that I've sort of spaced the scene apart. And you guys see me do this all the time. I just take little assets and drop them in and then space them all apart away from the camera. So the main thing is you get your camera in first, put a sky in, a big sky square, and then just start dropping these assets in. Now, what I've done, which is new for these assets, is I've made them loopable. So they start out not moving, and then they blow in the wind, and then they stop moving. And this allows you to even keep it so it's not always windy, so you can have it so it's calm, and you can just loop a certain section, and then let the wind build up, and then loop back. And each clip is about 15 to 16 seconds, or 15 to 20 seconds usually. So, Hero, I hope I answered your question. There's 5 to 5, but usually 5. But sometimes if they're the package isn't too big, we'll put 6 or more. So each one of these packages have like a different number of products. So these ones here, these are the flower pack. This is one flower pack, but it's mixed with 2 flower packs. But the foreground flowers are from one pack, and then the little bushes and trees in the back are another. And you know they're about $10 for a package. So you get, and they're all free. And this is grass, like grass. What is it? It's like grass clumps. What am I calling them? I can't remember what I called them. That's the worst. I'm calling these ones. What are they called? I can't believe I can't remember that. It's the worst. Prairie grass. They're grass patches. So these are like little clumps. So there's clumps of grasses, and then we've got like long strips of grasses. And I'll sort of show you all of those. I'll kind of take you through them really quickly. So we're a bit disorganized. I wasn't planning on presenting so specifically. But so this is grass patches 1. Then this is all just using one set of grasses, and this is grass patches 2. So this one has a little more foxtails and stuff in it. But each one is meant that you can rearrange them and reuse a lot of pieces over and over again, and kind of lay them out, right? So we're trying to keep the prices super, super low, and the main thing is because the assets don't look super real. So we're not trying to make realistic stuff. I can't stress that enough, because they don't look real. Like if you look at them, they kind of look like weird digital grossness. I know it's bad to say, but they don't look real, and that's just definitely not the point. So these ones here are the prairie grass set. So we have prairie grass 1, and that's just sort of a mix of like foxtail type imagery. So we have 1, 2, 3. I think there's 4 or 5 in the total set, and they shift a little bit in color and what the combinations are. Some of them have little plants in them, and some of them are clean. And then we have the grass patches, and these are again 4K squares. And I think on some of them we had to go down to 2K because we're getting way too big. But that being said, if any of you guys buy them now, if anyone buys any of the stuff on our store, when we update the packages, which we'll always be doing, and adding more to them and fixing things if they're broken or not working, you get all that stuff for free. So once you've bought something and a package, you will continue to get the updates and add-ons and expansions. Like we are planning on doing an OpenEXR version of them. You'll continue to have access to all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of like you get it, and then you just sort of you keep it, and you'll get all the updates and stuff, because we're using these on our films. So these aren't just something we're making just for you guys or for people. Like I'm using this on Harry Hill. All these grasses I've made for a film project I'm working on, and that's one of the main driving factors, and that's why they will get updated and they'll be made to look better, and you can keep all the different versions that you have. And yes, there is some fog in there, so I'll show you that too. So these are all the grass patches, as you can see, and they're just all little loops. Again, they start out really static, and then they get pretty windy, and then they go down. I tried to keep the wind reasonable. Like these aren't storm wind grasses, so that'll probably be a separate animation pack that we put when we get to that point. Then here's some little tufts of just green grasses, and they wiggle a little more. And the nice thing about these is that, again, you can kind of loop smaller sections of them together without going into the big wind gusts. Okay, so those are the grass patches. And you can see they kind of like change around a little bit. It's not like the most perfect thing in the world. And then we also have these dusty animated elements, which are also on the store, and they're really small. They're hard to see. But they're just they're pre-rendered particle sequences. And the reason we use these is like we've drawn little dust pieces and stuff like that. And the reason I like to use pre-rendered particle sequences is, first off, particular can be really picky and it's expensive, and you can only render on one computer. Oh, hey, Colin, welcome to the stream. You can only render with one computer per license. So usually when I want to use particular, sometimes I have to bake down all my particles so that I can actually render a scene. And secondly, it's way faster on the processor for me to have like a PNG or an OpenEXR sequence of dust particles and stuff like that, instead of trying to build a really dense particular scene with a depth pass that can allow me to put the particles in different spaces. So the way that we set up our particle stuff is we'll have a foreground one, which is big, and then we'll have a midground one where they get a bit smaller, and then we'll have a far background one, which is so small right now that you can't really see it on the screen. I'm assuming. But anyways, and then the next thing, in this particular one, I didn't create fog in this one. All I've done is I've duplicated the background sky gradient. So I've created this little sky thing in a nested comp. And I put a nested comp because it has a layer style on it. So if you look here, there's like a little layer style that does the gradient. Otherwise, it's just a solid. Hey guys, Whiskey White, hey, welcome to the stream. And Graphics, thank you for the nice compliments. Anyways, so I took where are we? Sorry, right here. So anyways, I duplicated the background and it just made it really transparent. So it's like at 6, and I don't know, you guys probably already know this trick, but if you click a value here and you press Control-Alt-C and then you press Control-V, I believe, right here, it will make it so all of these inherit this number. So if I put this to a 3, all of these guys will go to a 3. So it's just an easy way to, without having to select everything, do that, because now I can kind of just scale this up and down. And because the camera's only moving side to side, I don't need to use the little special plugin we did with Colin here with the Z Fighter to make the layers fade off, because I'm not moving into this shot. Anyways, so that's kind of how it's laid out. And it looks like you can see, it doesn't look super great at the moment. So the next thing that we've done is I put a light in there. So I'm going to show you what it looks like without a light, and which is, appropriately horrific, I think. I didn't use Plant Factory Producer. No, I want to look into that though, because that's something. That's why these kind of look rough. Is they're using paint effects, because Maya Paint Effects is it's pretty simple. It's it's really easy to set up a nice wind, and it's really comes with Maya, which I already have, so I don't have to buy a new license and learn a new program. But I am really interested in looking at Plant Factory and possibly, eventually doing even better assets that can sustain, hold up under more scrutiny closer to the camera. So this is kind of like our first foray into making this stuff public. But thank you for the Plant Factory heads up. I'll definitely check that out, actually, because I haven't looked at it in a long time. I know Plant Factory's been out for a while, and I haven't looked at it in a while. One of the ones that I've been using is another one that we've been doing trees for. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I have downloaded the Eon stuff before, but one of the things I've been using is also Speed Tree, and I've been making Speed Tree and animated trees, which will also be eventually be selling, which I'm using it in my current film to create like nice background trees and blowing wind trees and stuff like that that look a little bit more handmade. Um, but anyway, so all that to say, sorry, we keep diverting because I keep answering questions. I put a light in here. The light is pushed way to the back. It's at, if we actually look at the value here, let's pull up it's at 100,000, I think. And so what I've also done on every single layer is for the plants is I've put up a translucency, or sorry, transfer. So if we go into the material, I set the transfer light transmission amount to 70%, and then I just copied this value and I pasted it on every layer that I want to accept light. And then for the gradients, the sky pieces, I don't want them accepting light, because if I do, they'll get all dark or they'll get a hot spot in them. So I turn off for atmospherics and stuff, for like sky haze and stuff like that. I'll turn off any kind of interaction with light. So I just turn off the accepts light, accepts shadows, and that way I can use it to create haze really easily. And it doesn't get affected by the color of the light. So you can see if I put this up to 10, the fog will get denser and denser. And all I've done is I've really just gone through, and when I'm making these things, I'm literally just duplicating one, and then I'm just kind of pushing it into space, or I'm giving it a value. Like if I go negative 505, sometimes I'll give it a weird value so that it's not going to sit on top of another layer, and then I just scale it up, and I scale it up so that it fits whatever the camera move is. So I'm literally just duplicating these, and I'm watching what's happening with the plants. Sorry, as I'm doing this. Also, to see, if I feel like some of the plants are too close to the foreground, you can almost see when it clicks through and pops through a plant. Like if I feel like I need a little more of a separation between this layer and another layer, I'll just add one, and I'll watch where it pops through. So that's one way of doing that, and then I'll scale it. So as you can see, this looks pretty bad, but I'll show you where the plants are. So all of the little flowers in here, I've just gone through and I just manually placed them. So I bring one in at first, and just so you know, like I set up the camera right away. The camera moves put in, and I kind of animate it so I know where the whole scene's going. So if you just look at the flower itself, I also put depth of field on. I'll turn it off for now, and you'll also see how ugly things get without depth of field. Depth of field to me is like a really important tool in storytelling. I also, because I like to have a cinematic feel to everything, depth of field helps. These assets don't hold up super well, as I've said before, it's really close, especially if we turn the lights off. And this is at half res. They're still pretty solid. Most of them but they look really ugly. And until you color treat them, they just look awful. And again, that was a conscious choice in keeping the lighting pretty neutral and the look pretty stark. It makes you have more control over it with color, right? And these specific renders too are at 8-bit, but we will be releasing 16-bit versions as we get a better download solution, so that you can download segments or cart. I don't know what they call that, a la carte. So anyways, so there's depth of field on, and the depth of field really helps, but you don't have to work with it, especially if you have a slow computer. It kind of can get in the way of moving quickly. Let me just shuffle this over a little bit. Okay, so all this to say, I'm going on and on. Essentially what I've done is I go through and I add the flowers one by one, and usually what I'll do is, so I'll place one, and then like grab one and just place it in the scene, make it 3D, add the material values, and then I'll just kind of position it around until it feels good. And then I'll duplicate it and then pull it over and maybe move it around a little bit. I might even flip them or other things. But usually what I do if I'm using a duplicate of a plant, I'll just put it over here on the other side so you don't see the tiling so much. And with every plant asset, we've created at least two. So if you go here I'll go to Reveal, Source and Project. I've imported, here's Forget-Me-Not A, I have B. So I'll pull in B and then just drag that on there. And that gives me a second version. And I can either scale it up or move it around, do other things. I can combine them together. So sometimes what I'll do, Let's just turn the light off for now. Sometimes what I'll do is kind of push them into each other and sort of assemble a cluster like that. And then I can duplicate this again. So as you get more and more flowers, you can duplicate them and you can hide the duplication easier. The other thing that we've done for most of the flowers and stuff is we've set it up so that you can crop them. So you can pick little sections that you might want to use, and this section can hold on its own. They don't move enough that they fall out of the cropping, so you don't have to make a complicated thing. Hey, Lifeline, can you make a video on a run cycle? Yeah, for sure. That's definitely run cycles. They can be really tricky. But for sure, yes, we can definitely check out doing that because I do have a process for how to approach walk cycles and run cycles for a puppet, no matter what program you're using. Anyways, so yes, thank you for asking. Okay, so essentially, yeah, I move them around, and I usually like, because I have my computers a little bit stronger, I like to have depth of field on because it helps me compose the scene and give a sense of what's in and out of focus. So for instance, with these forget-me-nots, I know that then closer to the camera here, they're going to be in focus, especially at this point of the shot. But let's say I want to see, like, how close can I get this to the camera without getting it pixelated? And I can see what my blur is doing. So I can do that kind of right away. And you can already see how this breaks up the depth a little bit. And I'm getting even more use out of this asset because it's blurry, but now I'm kind of in an area I haven't used already. So that gives us even more flexibility with the assets right there. And this is barring any color treatment or anything like that. So the fastest, I'm just going to save a different version because I'm a little worried about accidentally saving over my work. So then, yeah, I basically do that, and I'll even, because I've already set my materials, let's say I want to use a forget-me-not here, or let's do this little bush. I'll alt drag that on. I get this little bush, and I'll just put that somewhere. And so it's just like I kind of lay things in and then just sort of feel them out and see how they're moving and see how it's feeling, and kind of put it together like that. Like, so maybe I'm not super happy with that. I'll put this one in instead. That one looks good. So essentially, once I've laid in a bunch of plants and I kind of have a general idea, and usually at this point I have a sky. Sorry, I know I'm jumping all over the place. I have a sky in here, so I can kind of see where it's going. Then what I'll do is I'll add a light. So when you add a light, it really depends on what you're doing. But I usually use fall off if I can. But for this, I'm going to push the light into the distance. And right now we get some really nice silhouettes, which is where these assets really shine as silhouettes. And I use them the most as silhouettes because I think it gives you the really beautiful shapes, and then you can use them as alpha cutouts and things like that. Anyway, so I'm going to push this in. I usually turn on, we'll just do smooth. I usually turn on fall off for these because what I want to do is I want to expand the light to a point where it's lighting things that are further away from the camera and leaving out these guys. See, if I turn this down, because they're translucent, as I turn this down, the light is not lighting the foreground. So I can get that kind of feeling of things being close to the camera fading off a little bit, and that's what I did for this. So I've got the light in space, and I'm just sort of shifting it where it starts touching the other plants, and then I can adjust the color of it. And by playing with the color of the light, I can change the feeling of the actual paint assets too. So if I start moving into like a red light, you see I can start changing the whole feeling of them right away. No, I don't think, Colin, they haven't changed from what's on Twitch at all. I'm still using the same gear. Okay, so yeah, anyways, so once I've done all that, I've set up all the lights and everything like that, and we've got everything looking okay, then I can go into rendering. So I'm just going to open up the last version of this before I started messing everything up. We'll go in here. Don't save. Hopefully I didn't wreck anything. But this takes a bit of time, like sort of laying them out, that takes a whole bunch of time. Do you think using the fill effect can be less expensive for processing? Yeah. I think Colin introduced me to using the fill effect. I do that all the time too. The only reason I'm using the light is because for these specific shots, I want to get the detail of some of the plants in there. You can see I'm kind of getting that. But totally, it's actually a really cool thing to do. is to use the fill effect. Absolutely. Another way you can do it too is if you really want to quickly do something, is you can turn the light down to like nothing, and you'll automatically get like a really sweet silhouette look. And that can be fast too. It's not tinted properly, of course, but it'll give you that cool like black look. Um, but yeah, I'm a huge fan. So I'll just show you really quickly. If we take an asset, um, I don't know. I'll just pick one. The fill effect is perfect. Another way you can do it is you can do a gradient, which is really cool. I like to use gradients on them as well. So let's say we have this asset, and I want to add. Let's go here. We'll do like a fill. We'll do a fill first. We'll do a fill. So we can do that, which is really cool, and you can fill it whatever color you want. The other thing you can do is use a layer effect. Layer effects can be really, really heavy. I'm not sure. I feel like the gradient yeah, so you can use a gradient. I do this a lot too, is I'll use a gradient and I'll mix it with the paint this guy here, and then you get this nice little silhouette, and I'll just color them. So let's say I want these. This gives you just kind of like a really nice animated feel, you know? And I'll make this more like kind of a bluish color or something. Whatever, it's just for demonstration, but you can do something like that, and that works beautifully, right? So you can really fake the whole thing. And the other thing that I'll do sometimes is even add texture to them. I'll make them a nested clip and add texture, which is what I did on all of my projects, is I do a little texture on them. The other thing you can do, which can be really helpful, is I'm not sure if it's median or min max. Somebody told me a better one too, though. I can't remember. What was that? Do you guys remember what that other one was for expanding the edges? What was it? It's like min-max, but it's for something. What is it called? I can't remember. I'll see if you guys know. What is it called? It's in the map. Maybe it's simple choker, or it's not. Yeah, it's simple choker. I think. You can go here. Or maybe we put it like a -10. Yeah, so that's another thing I use too, is we mix this with a simple choker, simple choke gradient map, which works great. And then if you combine that with a noise, so if we like, I know it's like a little bit, what is it called? Roughen edges or something. So you can do a roughen edges, and then we put that in, and we'll just do like, I don't know, rusty or something. And we'll increase the border on that. So once you've done something like this, for instance, like this is obviously it's not going to look really good yet, but once you start doing this, and then you add like an evolution to this, so that this edge boils a little bit, and you drop the frame rate, what you start getting is a really unique looking, interesting asset. And then you start stacking those together, they'll have all this like really nice motion, and they'll feel like something completely new. And yeah, Hero, thanks. I think it was even you, Hero, who suggested using the simple choker before. And then so additionally, what you can do too is then you can start adding like bevels or layer styles and like sort of stacking them all on top of each other. So let's say if I want to add like a bevel alpha, for instance. And this is not, I wouldn't use this specifically in this way, but you can kind of see, maybe start to get a bit of idea. One of the things I like to use is a little bit more of a layer style. So if I take this, let's say, and we'll just go Control-Shift-C, and we'll say move it into a new composition. We'll have a look at it as it's there. Oh, it didn't take the effects with it, did it? Oh, maybe it did. I don't know what I just did here. Oh, it's here. Okay, so you have this little thing here. I'm just going to move it up so we can kind of see it. So I'm already kind of creating a new style for this thing. And then what I can do is, let's say I want to go and do let's just do some layer style stuff to it really quick. So we can, layer styles you can't use really easily in a 3D scene though. You got to be careful with them because they'll break your 3D. And they can be super, super heavy. So I tend to use them in a nested composition if I can. But with this one, you can do something like blow the size out and change the color here and make it so it's like an overlay or something. And then maybe we'll do this one as like a bluish color. And then, so you have this, which can kind of be interesting. And then you just go and you can add like a texture on top of it, right? So let's just go, we'll just go here. I don't know if I have a texture on hand really quick, but I'll pull one in from my stock assets stuff here. I have some like just papers or something. I'm putting together a a scumble pack where it's all these different like boil textures that you can use. And that can be really, really cool for doing stuff like this. So let's just, I don't know, if I just grab some like, let's just grab this. I don't know what it looks like. I can't remember. Oh, and it's massive. Okay, so we'll just take this for instance and just drop this on top for now. I mean, it's not the best thing in the world at all, but you'll start to see as you kind of like create these little things how cool these assets can be, because you can totally make them your own because they're kind of generic and gross. They can be really, really cool. And they really will. This is, it's doing it with this kind of method here is not the best because you'll always get this weird edge on stuff. So it's usually better to do it a little bit of a different way, like have it nested or something like that. But regardless, and then once you add like a little turbulent displace to it or something like that, it can get even cooler. Because the thing is you'll see that your bevel looks way too smooth. So one thing you can do in the nested comp is like, let's say if you took something like, I use this a lot too, is if I go here and I'll go displacement map. You can take the paper, for instance. It has to be nested in there and stuff, but you can take the paper and you can crank up. You can create like a rough and kind of a displacement map out of it. This is way too intense, but I'll do this a lot too, and that'll add a roughness to everything. Right now, you can stretch the map to fit or center it. But anyways, you can do that to help break up the smoothness of certain things and add even more messiness to stuff. And then once they're all like, anyways, you can just create a whole boily mess. That's kind of how we did Giant Bear. But I know I'm kind of being all over the place. But you can see, even though these look hideous at the moment, oh, and let me put this up here. Even though this looks pretty bad at the moment, I hope you can see what the potential is of making something that's kind of more uniquely your own. Let's just go to the middle. And also, like, if I'm doing stuff like this where I really want it to look like animation, like something hand animated, which I always say all the time, is I like to drop the frame rate and posterize it. And then, have the texture actually boiling and moving around, which makes them look way cooler. But anyways, that's just like a quick crash through of sort of what you can do with it. I know we kind of shut off the side here. So let me go back here and just open it up again. We won't save. So I want to show you, now that you know how to place them in and kind of how you can stylize them, the next big thing is I render out, for this one, I render this out. So I render this whole pass out. I just do it as an OpenEXR file. So this has been rendered out as a complete file. And that's all that's in it. And then the next thing I did is I duplicated the whole thing and I created this thing which I'm calling lens flare blocker. But essentially what you do is you take this image, because I want to add that lens flare, and the way that you get that flickering lens flare in the distance here, so over here, you see that thing that's flickering in and out. I'm using No Light Factory, but I know there's like a ton of other ways you can do the lens flares. But then what you do with it, what you do is you essentially duplicate this comp here, and you go into it, and you just delete all of the stuff that you don't really need to block the light. So I would delete the dusty bits. I would also delete the sky. Everything about the sky will be deleted. And then I'll delete the light because I don't want lights. I don't even need all this stuff. Gone, gone, gone. So all that stuff. That's why you get this really ugly thing. And the other thing I want to do is I'm going to delete my camera because I want my camera for this like blocker one to come directly from my root composition. So I select these two, I press Control-Alt-C, and then I just paste this in there. And this will now, whatever I do to the camera in the original comp will be copied here. And then I can render this out. I'll render this out separately. And so then I'll call this my blocker. So then what you've got is you get the full deal here with my little sun in there, and look how dead that sun looks. It barely even works. And then I've got the light blocker here where I just rendered this out again, and this could all be black. Like you wouldn't have to have all the colors. I just did it because it's like easy. It is important though that you have the depth of field and everything else going on. because you're going to use this as an alpha pass, and if it's really hard edged, you'll see it cutting into everything. Um, it's one of the it's really important because I'll show you. Um, I'll go into the effects pass here. So this is what it looks like without any real color correction. All I've got on it now. So okay, let me just sort of get back to this. Essentially, I rendered those out, and then I dragged them into the scene. So let's. I guess we could just assemble a new one really quick. So let's say I've rendered it, and I'm going to just create a new project here. So I've rendered it here. This is the raw shot. Looks pretty bad. So now what I'm doing is I also have my little blocker that I made. I'll drop it in here. Okay. And that looks extra, extra bad. I believe it should have an alpha channel. It's funny that it doesn't look like it's respecting the alpha channel. It's interesting that it even worked as a... The original even worked. So I did render it out as with an alpha. It's like got floating point and everything, and I just totally ignored the alpha. Anyways, for some reason it worked anyways. It should have an alpha. You could probably just remove it. Sorry, there's always like a little weird thing when you do these projects. Okay, anyway, so there's my blocker, and then what I also had is I went and I grabbed my camera. So I want to grab the same camera I put in my blocker one, since it's just matched to the other one. Or I could go back to the original comp here, which is fine too. Select these two, Control Alt C. I'm going back to, this is going to be my effects composition. I'm pasting in my camera, and I'm actually going to grab my light too. So I'll grab the light here, this one, Control Alt C, and I'll just drop it in here too, because I need the light for my lens flare. And then all I do is we'll throw in a really quick lens flare. I'll go here, and I have Null Light Factory, I think it's called. It's a bit expensive. I know there's other solutions, but this one is just the easiest because it uses the blocker really quick. So then you just go here, and you essentially tell it to, I want to use a light, so I'm going to say use lights, and it should jump over to that existing light. And then I'm going to use an obscuration layer, and I'm going to pick the lens flare blocker. And we'll see if it's actually working. I'll be shocked if it's working because it doesn't have an alpha channel. I don't know where its alpha channel went because it worked on my other one. It used to work. Now it doesn't work at all. It's really weird. Anyways, there's always something, isn't there? Okay. So anyways, I think what I'll be able to do, since it's broken, let me just double check here. LF blocker, I could probably use its luminance. And then we get it a little bit. Does it work? I might have to key this out. It's really weird. I don't know why that happened. Sorry guys, this is kind of annoying. Where was I? In what? Where were we? Sorry, Shivanash, I don't know how to say your name exactly. You're asking me where was I, or was I meant to be somewhere? I'm not sure. Hey, Star Guardian or Big Magic. Oh, you're not even talking to me. That's okay. 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 I'm not sure why that. Yeah, I could maybe use OpenEXR. I'm not even sure why this is like it's super weird because it was just fine. I'm gonna just try to re-import it and just see. Because I just put it in here. Projects, website, renders, product banner, LF blocker. Unless I forgot to enable the alpha channel. That's really weird. So it's kind of annoying because that means that I have to re-render it. Anyways, sorry guys, I have to re-render that thing. I don't know if I can use the OpenEXR extractor for it. I'll try. I don't think I can. I don't think it has an alpha channel in it. EXR extractor, there it is. I'll see if it's in here. I don't think, oh, click info for dialogue, right? I don't use this very often. Click for dialogue. There you go. Yeah, it doesn't have a alpha channel. That's really annoying. Oh, there is? Oh yeah, yeah. No, I hear what. Yeah, I know what aspect you're talking about. Actually, Colin. I wish I must have rendered it by accident. Let me just. I'm gonna go back to the elf blocker one just so that I can show you guys how you have to make sure you render it because for some reason I didn't render this properly. Oh, here's. Yeah, look, there's no alpha. I'm a dummy. There you go. It needs an alpha, and I forgot to enable alpha on the LF blocker. That's my bad. Okay. Anyways, if you do it properly, I'll just see if I can go in and fix this really quick. Just grabbing this, what's here. We'll go like this really quick, and I'm just going to call this like, sorry, there's always a problem, hey? I wanted to show you something super simple, and now it's broken. So now I have to show you fixing it. Okay, so we'll go here, and what we do have a lot of gray, and gray is the worst keying color ever, but there are a couple of potential things I can do relatively easy. I could use like key light and try to key it out like this, although I've been finding it doesn't really work. Um, so one thing, the other thing I can do, which I find works usually okay, is if I go, we'll go to keying, and I'll just do a really basic key, like a color range key, and we'll just select gray, like that, and then we'll just make it fuzzy, because we don't need it to be perfect, because it's really just blocking the lens flare. And I found this tends to be a little bit better. YUV tends to work a little better. Let's see if I can optimize that. It's not great. It's not great by any means, but it's something. So you could use this. I don't want to use this because I have a the sun thing in the background, which I'm going to show you. But essentially, if I take what we just did and I drop this on the thing here, I'll alt click and drag. It should actually at least help the problem a little bit. We should get some blocking or not. Oh, right, I've got this set wrong. Got this set to luminance when you want to go alpha. There we go. Okay, so we will get some blocking here now. So if that helps, that kind of solves the problem there. The only thing it doesn't do, which I wanted, which is important, is that in this one here, which no longer works because the sun, it didn't render with an alpha. Let's just go into the Premiere file. If you look at this one, there's this like circle sun thing, which I've put in because the thing about lens flares blocking is unfortunately they're just a dot. You can see that they're just a dot. So you need to have like an object behind there to represent the sun or whatever you're seeing. So even if you look behind something really, you're going to see the sun. You're going to see the shape of the sun because it's ginormous, right? So all I've been doing with this is I take this sun layer and I'm just copying and pasting it from the from the main. This one from the main flowers here. Where is it? I don't want blocker. Kind of everything's a bit of a mess at the moment. Oh, here we are. I have this little medium yellow, and it's just a thing that I put in to be the sun. And all I did is I parented it to the point light, and then put its position to 0. So it's just going to follow the sun everywhere, right? So I can copy this, or what I could do is just copy both of these. Control Alt C. I'll just do this again. So product here, we'll just delete the point light right now, and I'll just press Control V, and we'll have the little sun will be there. But then what I can do is I can just take this guy here, put it up here, and I can just use it as like an alpha matte or an inverted alpha matte probably. And it should, as you see, it's sort of like cutting the sun out, and it's good enough because it's a bit fuzzy and it's okay. I'll probably do a re-render just because I want it to look really good, but you see it's there. And we've got the little sun bit. So then now the next thing is too is I put a shine filter on, which is a trap code filter, and they're kind of expensive. Yeah, Ahmed, I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry for my poor pronunciation. You can absolutely send an email either to me or at the email that's associated with the YouTube account. Or you can send it to info@edfilms.com. They tend to be better at info. They're better at responding. I tend to be like drowning in a bunch of stuff every day, and so it's really hard for me to stay on top of my email. So yes, if you email at info@edfilms.com, we have somebody we're a small company, so always somebody responds to it, and that'll get to Emily or Roxanne or somebody. So yes, please. Um, so, anyways, okay. So back to the thing. Um, Essentially, oh man, I'm gonna have to. I think I have to stop soon. Oh no, no wait, I have till 2. Um, do I have till 2? I can't remember. Yes, I have till 2. Anyways, so we've got that. The next thing I used is the shine, a shine filter. So if I go Control Y, and shine is a trap code filter. So again, it's a little bit. This is like it's not stuff unless you're at school or something or you have a little bit of money. It's a bit expensive for what it is, and you got to be really careful because it's super easy to overuse it. And you can see what it's already done to the scene. It's made it look a million times better. I can tell it to follow a 3D light. You have to tell it what the name of the light is usually, but I've already named the light. Oh, actually, no, I haven't. Sometimes it won't track the light properly unless you give it a name, but it looks like it found it okay. Um, yeah, you can tell it to just whatever. Press A light and see how it's in the middle. You just rename your light. A light. And it'll pop over to the light source. So that gets us there. So you can see it's already changed everything a lot. Now I tend to like to really not let the effects like this be too much of the feature and overpower everything. So I drop its opacity down quite a bit. I don't want it to look like a 90s Transformer movie. And that'll just sort of help. So you can see that we're getting that the shine is giving a nice ambient space feeling to it. System configuration, good question. It's a pretty big system. I've got an NVIDIA, two NVIDIA 1080i's. It's I can't remember what chip I have. A number of multi-core processors in it. It's a pretty big machine. It's a box workstation. So if you go to BLXX Technologies, it's a model from about 2 years ago. It's all on on my Twitch, but I can send you the link for it in just a moment. Okay. So anyways, so that's essentially where we go. Like, and then we've got everything we need to do like a proper color pass and stuff. And also, I want to make sure this like yellow guy here looks kind of bad right now. I'm going to make him an add. And that should make it so it's like a nice bright circle. So I don't want it to be just a yellow thing. I want it to be a nice bright circle. So we've got that in there now. And so the next big thing is it's just color correction, right? So I guess we'll just take this little messy project here, product banner flower 003. So usually what I do is I'll drag and nest this in or render this out. Like I'll usually render this out because unless like this one I wouldn't because I only have 2 layers on it, so it's relatively easy. But what I'll do is I'll name it 003 and then CC for color correction. And then in here, you can do a number of different things. You could use what comes with After Effects, which is synthetic aperture, which I use for sure a lot. I use this a lot on films. If I'm doing little things, I tend to use Magic Bullet just because it looks pretty good. It's kind of like Instagram for After Effects. No, I meant the actual. I didn't mean the animated movie because the animated movie was kind of cool. Sorry, I guess I meant more like 2000s Transformer film. You know, like the kind of Michael Bay stuff. Or you got to be careful. And I say 90s because like in the computer world, where I was when I was growing up, like visual effects were huge. People loved them, so they overdid them like crazy. So that's always it's a thing. Anyways, so here I'll like tweak the colors a little bit and you'll see like I'm kind of already getting some better, well, yeah, there's a little bit. I don't know if you guys can notice the difference on the stream actually. It's probably pretty hard to see the difference. But you can start tweaking stuff this way. So I tend to like to use Magic Bullet. But you don't have to. So there's a lot of things you can do in Magic Bullet which make things look really cool. And I'll show you that really quick. It's really pretty easy. But there's a lot of things you can do manually too. Like if I want to create like a cool glow or something like that, there's a lot of glow filters in After Effects. So if I go glow, there is glow stuff here that you can use to like create whatever you want. And it's based on color, that's fine. And threshold, let's pop the threshold up a lot. The color is very aggressive on this. And we can make it more like softer. It's not so crazy. But you see, so I've added this little glow to it. which is cool. And then if I do something like, well, actually, let's copy this glow and we'll put it on the adjustment layer instead. And then, or you can create like a bunch of adjustment layers. The other thing I'll do is if you want to create like a nice hazy lens, you could just do this. Just go Gaussian. Let's just do a Gaussian blur, and we'll do like 200. So that'll create like sort of a fuzzy mess. Or maybe let's go 100, and we'll go repeat edges. So that should get rid of those weird things. And then with this, you can kind of do like a soft light pass or something, and reduce its opacity, or just put it to normal, whatever you want, and that will give you like a soft lens feeling. So let's just shut this off so we don't have such aggressive coloring. So you see what I'm doing there? That gives me a nice like just softness filter on that, and that's something that Lumetri. I've not used Lumetri. Lumetri, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, Lumetri color is good. You're right, and it's a really good one. I used to use DaVinci actually when I worked as a film editor or a video editor. I use that a lot. Usually, what I like to do, so I'm just going to jump into what my workflow is at the moment especially for a project where I need to be kind of fast. So I'll take this. So I'm going to go Control Y, and I've got this. This is like my base starting point to work with. I want to get to a spot where I have a bit of a lens flare in there because I'm going to do some color correction here. And now what I'm going to do is I'll create like an SA for like synthetic aperture or whatever. I mean, you could use Lumetri. Is Lumetri even? Oh, it's here. Yeah, it's here. I don't use this a lot. Oh, and they've got the creative color stuff. Yeah, so this one you can do here. I really like using color wheels whenever I can. So again, you can do this stuff here. And ruin your project. It looks like it kind of works better with a mouse. Okay, so Lumetri is one. It's good. You're right. That's a good one. So this is what I usually do is I'll use synthetic aperture or something just to like touch up things. But then the main thing I'll use is something like I've been using Magic Bullet, so I'll just call it MB, and I'll use Magic Bullet looks or something. I know it's a big cheat. Some people kind of hate it because it's like it can look a little bit out of the box. But let's just go to Magic Bullet. I think it's relatively affordable. I don't know. So I go to looks, and we'll go edit. And it takes a second to load up. It can be a bit sketchy at times. Okay, so for something like this, I kind of want it to feel like a 70s film or something. So I'll go to color film stock. So they have a bunch of stuff here. And I'm going to pick a color film that and what they do is these are like just some presets that you can start with, right? And so I want to get something that kind of gives me that filmic look, like an old film. Maybe this one's cool. I want something that preserves my color a little bit because you'll find there's very subtle shifts in all your lights and darks for every time you shift to a different film. It'll look a bit different. A film quality will look a little bit different. So that one feels pretty cool to me. This is a stack of like film negatives and then a film print kind of working together, and you'll see how you lose all your brights. Like look how flat that gets. Like your whites go completely flat. So this may not be entirely desirable. One thing you can do is you can crank your exposure up, but that will kill off the rest of the thing, and you still get these really flat whites. So it may not be a good solution for this film, but I don't know, maybe it's okay. It's usually where your eye's pretty relative. It's more about what relatively makes sense than what is actually going on. It's relative to everything else. And there's something about the way film handles whites, which can be really cool. So that one's really blue, which is cool. And I mean, you can adjust the colors and play with it more after. So we'll go with this one for now, sorry. Again, and what I can do is I can start tweaking the colors and the values, or let's just go here, and maybe I'll just use like a curve, a really simple quick curve. And then let's go like, whoa, gotta be careful here. My pen is really intense. Let's go here. So let's brighten some of this. I don't think I want it this bright, really. I'm not really doing a really proper color correction pass here. Also, the thing about this is if you want to, you should pay attention to your scopes. So if I just push this away, go away, get out of here. There we go. We can have a look at our scopes and make sure that we're roughly in the right range of things. So one is your whites. We're not blowing anything out, which is good. You want to make sure that you're not doing something like this and flattening all your whites out. It's really up to you, though. It depends on how you want the image to look. I tend to just, because all my monitors are color calibrated, I tend to trust my eyes and just kind of go with that. Um, so anyways, so what we can do here, which is kind of fun, is we can do the stuff with our shadows, and it can be a little more aggressive than with Lumetri or synthetic aperture, because what it can do really easily is, let's say I set my shadows to a bluish color. Now I can pull the lightness of that up really easily, because right, you'll notice as you saturate your shadows, things will start crushing out really fast down in the greens and stuff here. So I can pull the brightness of the shadows up so that I'm not actually killing all the light information, right? So that not everything's just crushing to black. So, but if I want it to feel like the sun's really coming through them, maybe I'll warm those darks up a little bit. So you see, I'm starting to play with the lighting and the way it looks. And I can adjust some of this brightness and darkness in my mid ranges and in my, just evening out the spectrum a little bit. So, and then let's just make our sun like super yellow. And our sky can be like that. So, and let's take a look what it is without and with. So we're getting definitely more feeling and mood. For something like this, yeah, lens vignette, it's popular. Got to be careful with it because it's like really Instagrammy to have them, but you know, it's cool. Whatever, we'll just throw it in there. I try to hazard on the side of subtlety, and the same thing with like, let's say, chromatic aberration, which is really popular. Um, oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Hero. I appreciate that. Um, So with this, let's say for this, I'll just do like a 0.2. I tend to try to be pretty careful with these. Keep your numbers kind of low. If you go too high, again, it's going to look really contemporary. And then something I always mix chromatic aberration with is like an edge blur. So we do a bit of edge softening. Now this is obviously way too extreme. It can be really helpful though. Like I just did this film Giant Bear, and I used this stuff like crazy just to hide some of the problems in the film, and also it just helped the film look older because it does happen in real cameras, right? So you'll get this edging, and the chromatic aberration needs to like pair itself with the blur a little bit because you get an aberration in the lens. The light travels through it differently as it reaches the edges, so that can be a very naturalistic effect as long as you manage it well. And also, depending on where you put it in the stack, like if you put the aberration after, um, sometimes it might have a different effect, right? Like it might be too sharp. So maybe you want the edge blurring to happen before. It really depends on what you're doing. Okay, so the other thing, maybe for this one, I'll do a glow. So we go into the matte section and I'll add a diffusion. And the diffusion we can go let's crank the glow way up. We'll just make this crazy shot. And what I can do is I can kind of pick the threshold. Like here's the grade is like how much the glow is, like what the intensity of it is. And then we can pick whether we want it only to be on highlights or we want it to just kind of blow out everything. So this means it'll include the darks. So we'll just turn the grade down a lot. But what this will do is if we just turn this, actually we need something there with 0. Let's turn the glow property down so that it's not brightening everything. But this will kind of mush out everything and just without adding glow. Like glow will increase the exposure, I think, overall. Like in the really bright areas, it'll actually brighten it up. The grade is just how intense it is. And then you can do your, oh, and I think grade also is, then we can adjust the size. So you can make it either really bloomy or really thin. This is a really nice, quick way to work, and I like that about it. And you can also shift the color of your glow in this, so we can kind of tint it whatever color we want. And sometimes it's cool to do the reverse. So if you expect everything's warm, 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 you can start making things overly warm. Maybe it'd be cool to make neat to make a bluish glow or a purplish glow and just see how that feels. I have a tendency to make my stuff over warm, so sometimes it's good to like play around with the different qualities and kind of get a different something that's not as expected. So I've cooled off my skies a little bit instead of amping up the warmth, which can be really beneficial. Another cool thing too that they have here in the post section, which I really like, is the HSL colors wheel here, and this allows you to pick specific hues, for instance, and adjust their properties. So I can take the reds and start crushing them down a little bit. And this can be a really neat way to work with color. And there's not a lot of programs that offer you this specific functionality. It's in things like DaVinci have it, like where you're literally isolating a hue and you're kind of telling it how much color you want, what you want to choose. Like I could desaturate this specific area of red, and I could desaturate my oranges. See? And now we have a different feeling, but I can keep the saturation on something else. And I think this is like again like an underappreciated thing. Is that this goes way well beyond sort of the Instagram filtery thing of the world. Now like we've moved into sort of an autumny, like closer to winter, the end of autumn feel here, right? And I could push my blues harder, bring those up. There's not a lot of blue in this scene, and also it depends on where you put it in the layer stack, how it will affect things, right? Compared to here, it really depends because we're adding color correction on top of color correction, which can be good and it can be bad. I don't really know. I think for this scene, it's kind of meant to look a little more like this, a little less like this. But I just wanted to show you this really cool thing. They also have some really good presets in here too, so play with that. I'm not gonna. This isn't specifically a big magic bullet pitch, but there's definitely the lutes or LUTs you can use, and they have some good noise passes, which we're getting for free. Well, not for free, but we're getting it from the film stock. We're getting a grain already, which can kind of come with it. But you can also just use the renoiser or something like that if you want. So once you go OK, you'll see the difference. Bonk, kind of cool. Looks pretty nice. And essentially we've managed to achieve what we're looking for. If I want to, I could have synthetic aperture and just do some final little adjustments. So I tend to render out all my movies and all my projects raw without any color correction. I call them a raw file. And then when I do my final color correction, that's an entirely separate render because it's really hard to go back and color correct, fix something, especially if you've gone and put grain on it. You got to be careful with your grain, because if you do color correction on top of something that's already grainy, it can really make a mess. So this is the full res here. You can see that the assets are holding up pretty nicely. Now that they're colored and everything, they just look a lot better, even though they're kind of junky looking. So I think that's like something to remember, is even with all the grasses and everything, it's the same deal. With a bit of color work and everything else, they look a lot better. I can show you I'll show you one of the grass ones really quick, just before we wrap up here, because I'm getting close to the end. I want to show you one of the grass banners, and this one I did water, which I did a water tutorial on YouTube. If you guys check out the channel, you'll find the water tutorial. I just did the same thing that I did in my water tutorials for this one. It's a slow render though, because there's so much going on. Oh, not this one. This is that grassy shot. So again, with this one, really quick on a side note, you can see what the color correction did for this. This is what it looks like with some color correction. And this is what it looks like raw. It's kind of not as nice. You get a feel of what's going on, but it's not great. And okay, so actually one other thing, there's another asset package I'm using in here, and in this one, and it's sort of this pack we put together. Let me see if I can pull it out. It's like a little cloud and fog pack. And sorry, I feel like I'm selling a bunch of stuff today, but I'm really not. You guys don't have to buy this. You can make all this stuff yourself. But it's just what I'm using, because I use this stuff all the time in all my projects. So we have a cloud and fog pack, and it's just Photoshop assets, and it's just a whole bunch of things that I've painted, that are just a whole bunch of layers. For some reason, they're not showing. There are a whole bunch of layers and clouds and stuff like that. And they just you can just use them and stuff and color tint them. So that's all I do, is I just grab them and I color tint them. They come with varying degrees of detail. Like some of them are like really like more like this, and then others are a little bit more more simple and foggy looking. But anyways, I used those inside of these grass ones here just to create the ground fog, and then I just kind of animate them moving a little bit. So all this like ground fog and stuff is just these guys just duplicated over and over again. I wish I could see it, but I can't see right now. Where is it? Product tile grass. Yeah, so in this one was going, oh yeah, right. So you can kind of see, what are you doing? Get out of here. Kind of see what's going on. And again, I used our little dust particles. This one's really simple. There's really not even that many layers going on. But you can see this little light little fog in there. and the fog is picking up color, so there's a few lights in here. If I turn all the lights off, you'll see how raw everything looks and how gross it looks. See, really raw. And in this instance, I allowed the fog to pick up. The fog is 100% translucent. So if we look at these little fog layers, they have transfer. And the transfer for the light transmission, they're, oh, not 100%, they're 80. So they're affected by the light. So if I change the color of the light, the fog will change color. And that can be very, very useful. So this means that if I decide I want to push things red, I don't have to retint my fog. It'll kind of it'll go there with the light. So you see? But my sky and my clouds aren't affected by the light at all. So once again, it's the same kind of principle. And yeah, and then again, so the other one, and this one's like the really slow one. So if we go to this guy here, this is a lot of layers to it. Well, not a lot of layers. It has a lot of trickery in it. And I've done this before, but this is how you create like reflections, and they're not perfect. Like I didn't spend a ton of time on these on the water here, but this is just done in After Effects with some pretty simple tricks, which I used in National Geographic, and I used in Giant Bear, and I used in I did a tutorial on it. You can find it. But essentially, what I've done is I've created the same kind of setup as what we did before with my grasses, really quick, dropped them in. This one has a little more layers going on because I guess I just kept getting progressively more ambitious as I was building it, which is usually the curse that happens to me. Is I'm like, oh, cool, and I start getting excited and I make everything more and more complicated. But this one I mixed in some of our long grasses, so this is grass patches mixed with some long ones in the background. You barely see them, and I also threw in one of our animated cloud packs that we put together. Those are here. Now these are pretty. Where are they? Oh, maybe they're not here. Oh yeah, they're stylized clouds. So I just rendered out. I made a bunch of stylized clouds in Maya, and then I just have them kind of evolving over time. And I just made a whole bunch of them. They just sort of growing clouds that you can use static, or you can speed them up or slow them down, whatever you want. But I use those just to like create some nice distant clouds, and I mix that with a background tile or a background painting, and then it gives it just that little extra bit of life in the shots. So anyways, the thing with the water is then I created we'll just go find it really quickly. It's all in here. I basically created an animated mask layer like this, and it's just a layer with some blurring on it, and it's got a turbulent noise. And then what you do is you set it to a silhouette alpha, and it'll cut a hole in this whole shot. And then you just duplicate the whole composition. And again, you can see this in the tutorial. I don't want to get too much into it because it's a bit time consuming, and we were running out of time. So essentially, I create a reflection, which is just the same composition, but I get rid of all the water and I get rid of all everything else to make it really raw. I keep the clouds and everything like that, and then you combine the two together. I believe either in here, not in here. In this one, you take one's a reflection and one is the normal one. So the normal one goes on top. That's the one you just saw. And then you take the reflected one, you bring in your camera and everything, and you make it 3D and continuously rasterize, and you flip it. So then you'll get the actual reflection of the thing. And then I use like this water surface mask, which is essentially just a turbulent noise layer on top here to create a luminance mask. And then you can sort of see through it. So it's just kind of like a really simple little trick. And if you combine it with an adjustment layer, which is looking at that luminance mask for displacement. So I've taken this and I've combined it with a displacement map, and it's looking at the water surface luminance layer to distort the surface. So you'll see as I click it on, you get the distortion. So that it looks a little digital and stuff like that. I mean, I guess water always does, but it kind of gives you, it's just like another little added thing. And it looks like water, CG water, and I just, it's like a trick. It's just a really simple trick. Okay, and I guess that's it. Like I was planning on trying to like build something with you guys, but I guess like an hour isn't really that long in real life. So yeah, I guess we got to see. I hope this has been helpful in some way. get to see how these assets go together and how you kind of make something that's kind of blah looking, a little lame, and then take it to the next level and get it to more something like this, which is a little more cinematic and certainly makes those assets look a lot better. Now, I didn't get into how you can stylize these. I mean, I showed that a little bit, but for all my Harry Hill project and stuff like that, I'm really just using the silhouettes and pulling color from these things. And I'll show you guys more videos and stuff later. I'm doing a tutorial series that shows you how to use these things combined with these, and I've got another stylized example that I'm working on right now. Which I'm going to see if I can pull it up. I'm trying one to take these assets and use them. Hopefully this is working. It doesn't look like it is. Bear with me for 1 second. I should have, it doesn't look like it's working. For some reason, it doesn't matter. Anyways, I'm doing one where I've got a painting and I'm doing more of a painted style for the animated assets, and then so we'll see how that looks, and hopefully it looks cool. But anyways, thanks for hanging out, guys. Just as I guess a quick update is that we've finished Giant Bear's finished finally. So things have been really crazy. So for anyone who's emailed me and stuff, you'll be hearing from me soon. Finally, we're just in the final stages of audio, which is really cool. The film's looking really great, and I can't wait to have you guys show you guys. So, anyways, thanks a lot, and I'll see you again next week. See you later.